Hi everyone, this is Yana Smakula and welcome to another Hero Arts video tutorial. We're going to be making a clean and simple You, Me, and the Sea card using one of the Hero Arts color layering sets, the color layering seahorse. I'm going to show you how you can slightly manipulate the colors of your inks by using a white ink pad. I already have the base layer of my seahorse mounted onto my clear block, and I've gotten a few ink pads ready. I have purple ombre, white, and ultra pink. I will be using a few other colors today too. I'll mention them later. I'll set the white and ultra pink aside for now, and I will be using just the purple ombre to begin with. I love using ombre ink pads to do my color layering because the colors of inks in these ink pads have been carefully selected and colors work so well together. It really takes all the guesswork out of picking out the right colors. So I'm going to start by inking my base layer using the lightest color of ink. Now, even though this image is a bit bigger than my ink pad or my ink pad section with a specific color that I'm using, I can still ink it up using this color by just turning the stamp or, being careful when I do my inking. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp the first layer. Now let's go ahead and stamp the second layer. I'm going to use the middle color of my ombre ink pad, and I'm going to layer the image over the first layer and then go ahead and stamp it. And now it's time to stamp the last, third layer of the seahorse image. I'm using the darkest color from my ombre ink pad and once again stamping that to complete this image. So there we have a nice seahorse stamped in purple, and we only used one ink pad for this. Now I want my seahorse to be a bit lighter, so I'm going to introduce a white pigment ink pad onto one of the layers. I'm starting in the same way. I'm inking up my base layer with the lightest purple and stamping it onto the paper. For my middle layer, I'm going to first ink it up with a white pigment ink. This is unicorn white. It's a gorgeous white, and I really love using it for my color layering images. Especially when I'm mixing different colors, not just a few shades of purple or pink, but say, green and yellow and red. My ink pad isn't completely white, and this is actually because I mostly use it for my color layering. So I'm inking up my stamp and stamping this over the base layer. It looks fun, and in some cases I love to keep the top layer white, and I'll show you that later today. But for this image, I'm going to keep going and continue adding color. So I've cleaned my middle layer stamp. I've removed all of the white pigment ink so that I do not contaminate my ombre ink pad, and I stamped over this layer with the middle purple color from the ombre ink pad. So the middle layer is double stamped. First stamped in white, and then stamped in medium purple. And what this does, it makes that medium purple color a bit lighter. I'm going to go ahead and finish this image by stamping the last layer using the darkest color. And now you can see the two images side by side, and you can really tell that the seahorse on the left is much lighter. And all we did here, we added a layer of white pigment ink while still using the same colors to stamp our seahorse. With this technique, I feel the images also have a little bit more detail to them. The middle layers are not perfectly stamped. They are offset just a little bit, so there's just white in some sections and then just middle purple in other sections, and then there's that purple over white in the middle. So you get more color variation. Now, if you don't like that much color variation, you can use a misti stamping tool or a stamp positioner to make sure the middle layers are aligned perfectly. But I wanted to show you how this imperfection can be used to our advantage. I also need to stamp a few more images for my card, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp those using the same ombre, a purple ombre ink pad, and also white and ultra pink. And I'll also be using Butterbar and bubblegum ink pads for some of these images. So I stamped the tall seashell. You'll have to excuse me here. I don't know the technical scientific names of these seashells, so I'm just going to call them seashells. So I stamped the tall or the long seashell using purple ombre. And I'm using bubblegum and ultra pink to stamp the starfish. I'm once again using white and adding it over the base layer to mute it slightly and then stamping the top layer in ultra pink. Now I did mess up my stamping here just a little bit as I didn't align the image perfectly. I'll re-stamp it later. So I'm also stamping the round seashell, and I'm using Butterbar for the base layer. And then for the top layer, I'm only going to use unicorn white. So usually you go from light to dark when working with the color layering sets, but here I'm going from light to white, or I guess you can say from dark to light. So my stamping is done for the most part, but there is more that you can do with these images to make them pop. Here I have sparkle embossing powder. It's a mix of clear powder and clear glitter, and I'm going to sprinkle it over the round seashell, and I'm going to heat set it. The white pigment ink stays wet for a long time, so there's no need to use clear sticky ink for the powder to stick. It will grab onto the white ink. I'm also going to add the same sparkle embossing powder to the other images. For the other images, I am using clear sticky ink and stamping the base layer, which is the largest layer, and then covering that with sparkle embossing powder. So I'm going to heat set it and melt the powder. Now what this does is it makes the colors on our images a bit more vibrant. It also adds a nice glossy shine to the image, and it also adds a little bit of glitter that stays in place and doesn't come off. You know, I love using the sparkle embossing powder for the underwater cards. I've shared a color layering fish card in the past, and I used the same sparkle embossing powder to make the fish appear wet. And it was, you know, a sparkly, super sparkly fish too. So I've added this magic top layer to all of my images, and I used matching dies to cut those out. I've arranged the die cuts on a white panel, and I want to stamp a seaweed image in the background. The seaweed image is from the color layering fish stamp set. So I've placed my panel in my misti. I've added the stamp on top where I wanted to have it stamped. I closed my misti door, picked up the stamp, inked it up with the same purple ombre ink pad, removed the die cuts, and stamped it onto the panel. Now I also stamped one more image, but I stamped it upside down by accident and it was totally fine, by the way. But in the end, when I added all of my images later, it was all covered, so I could have skipped stamping it. Next, I used a die and trimmed my panel to have a rounded edge at the bottom, and I also made a small stamped panel using a candy stripe cling background stamp and the same ombre ink pad. I adhered the purple panel onto my card base. Next, I used foam adhesive to foam mount my die cuts and create a focal point on my card. Once that was done, I stamped a sentiment. It reads, "You, me, and the sea." And now I'm stamping just several air bubbles onto the background using the same black ink. I think this is a nice card to give to someone you want to go on vacation with, and you can just write, "Let's go on vacation to the sea" on the inside of the card. So once all of my stamping was done, I added a strip of double-sided adhesive to the top of the panel and adhered foam adhesive squares to the bottom of the panel and adhered this panel onto my card base, so it ended up being sort of like on a slope there, you know, just something different for a change. I also adhered a few clear sequins around my cluster to finish this card. Now before I go, I wanted to show you one more example where I used white pigment ink. Here I have two seahorse images stamped using Tide Pool and purple ombre. The one on the left has a layer of white and looks lighter, while the one on the right was stamped as is without any white. So, you know, this is just another example here. I hope this video has given you some ideas on how to stretch your ink pad colors and how to use your white pigment inks. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section on YouTube or on Hero Art's blog. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!